Hello everyone and welcome to the GatherVerse EU Summit. My name is Ffiske. I am the editor of the Immersive Wire. And what I do is I explore the nuances when it comes to the metaverse as well as virtual and augmented reality. It's been an interesting year, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be providing a summary of sorts based on my own perspectives of what's been happening and what we've come across. There's no slides or anything. There's no things to look at the screen. It's very much simply just my voice. So if you wish to make yourself a cup of coffee, perhaps some tea, get yourself a little bit of a nibble of food, by all means, and you can treat this as a low poly podcast for this section of the event. So, what has happened in the Metaverse 2022? So, it accelerated very quickly, 2020, 2021, with the rebranding by Meta, and we're seeing a lot of companies which are delving into the area and dipping their toes into it. It's very much a Wild West-esque period we're seeing. It's very similar to what we've seen with virtual reality in 2017, when there was less of an agreement on X, Y, and Z, but they were experimenting in that in the first place. So we are seeing that with the metaverse, and 2022 has been the continued evolution of that, but in kind of multiple different ways. Some of it is organic. We've seen a lot of people who have specialized in creating virtual reality enterprise experiences, and they've now rebranded themselves as doing metaverse experiences. There's been a natural and organic transition where it's kind of the evolution of that idea, just in a much wider context. We're also seeing other companies who, in a very similar vein, they found they are naturally part of the metaverse discussions, kind of rebrand themselves in that way. So, for example, there may be companies who create engines for creating spatial content, and as such, they advertise themselves as a metaverse company. What I find very interesting is the level of interest in the metaverse, but lack of understanding. There's a knowledge gap between the people who are interested in the metaverse and what it actually is. So there were some studies which have shown that there are a lot of people who are aware of the metaverse, at least in the US and the UK, but don't actually define it because they don't know how to define it themselves. And that's due to a whole myriad of companies and organizations which are defining the metaverse in all sorts of different ways, kind of muddying the conversation. We may well see a more solidified definition in the years to come. I certainly hope so. It's quite a confusing time in the moment. But in the meantime, what we have is kind of a babble of people which is kind of exploring the definition. We do need some sort of solid one at the moment, but we'll see. What we are also seeing is a kind of gap in talent. So I need to be careful about wording this to an extent. There are a lot of people who talk about the metaverse. There's a lot. And there's a lot of people who are exploring kind of its potential and what it can do. There's just not quite enough people who can effectively build experiences, basically. And I just feel that it just needs a little element of exploration in regards to it. So, for example, there's a company like Journey, which was founded by Cafe Hackle alongside lots of other people. And they've got a big team of people who can actually make these metaverse experiences. And as such, they're in very high demand. Where there's lots of agencies or companies who say that they want to tap into the metaverse conversation, Journey is an example of a company who can actually do it. We're seeing consultancies who offer similar services, and we're seeing other companies who offer the same things as well. The idea of bringing things in-house is really important, and there's lots of people who are investigating that at the moment. So that needs to close, and I feel 2022 has made that gap incredibly clear, and that's something which I found. There's a difference between the talkers and the doers, and that gap is going to be closing slowly over time as people who work in the metaverse is being paid very well at the moment. There's going to be a natural shift of people who want to do a little career shift towards that as they evolve in that particular way. So those are kind of the wider trends which I've seen in the moment. And the trouble with the metaverse is it is such a wide topic that I can go in all sorts of different directions. So please allow me if I do go in lots of different ways. And also please allow me if I'm going to be candid as well. I do have strong opinions when it comes to specific areas and what I'm less sure about. You can agree or disagree, but these are the areas which I'm just being very honest about in my own, from what I've seen myself. And what I'm worried about is one area I'm unsure about is education. Now, I do not mean enterprise training. Enterprise training is strong, well supported, provably effective, will continue to grow quite effectively and organically for that reason. In much the same way that cloud computing is growing effectively and smoothly for that reason. And I do have an issue with the education of children or younger people, because in a lot of places around the world there are issues when it comes to getting enough equipment or enough manpower just to basically help educate people to begin with. And the idea of introducing immersive spaces to that, I feel is running before you can walk, where I feel there's more core issues that need to be solved before we evolve that a little bit further. So that's one area which I'm less sure about. I'm also less sure about the integration of blockchain NFTs. So before you close a window on me making a statement as wild as that, there's plenty of arguments that show that the development of the metaverse, when it comes to a spatial computer platform, doesn't necessarily need to be connected to blockchain technologies. Yes, there are huge benefits to having a layer 0 which is blockchain based, and yes, there may well be elements of NFTs that will appear in the metaverse over time. The NFTs will be precursor of some sort to the ownership of digital assets within the new spatial economy that's being developed. But I do not think that it is a prerequisite or necessity for what we're building. I don't feel, for example, that Ethereum is a right and proper for the metaverse purely because of the gas fees. Imagine millions of people who are trying to use that blockchain for transactions. The gas fees are ridiculous. It needs to be as cheap as a PayPal fee, if not lower, in order for it to facilitate trade. And I feel when it comes to NFTs also, it is so fascinating because I do feel that the exclusive access to certain assets will be so important. And I do feel that creatives in the metaverse are going to be some of the most influential and wealthy people in the years to come. But I don't feel that the way NFTs are used at the moment is apt or right when it comes to it. They do give you access to communities, but that acts more like a ticket. The way I envision it is the metaverse is going to be more of the ownership of assets which you can show off in your personal spaces, or apparel which you wear as well, convey a sense of identity. In fact, I read a fascinating Vogue business article exploring that when it comes to identity, people kind of really want that realistic element, which is fascinating because I also see it as a platform for other people to express themselves in very creative ways, which I want to explore in depth in some time. So that's an opinion which I'm evolving over time. I've attended many NFT events. I went to the Thunderbird NFT launch a few days ago. That was a lot of fun. And I'm so curious about its development, and I do think there's a place for it, but we've got to be observant on it. So how am I going to conclude this? So I feel like the Metaverse 2022 is being the cooling down of hype, where we're surfing the Gartner hype curve, and I think it's becoming slightly more realistic. I think it's been clear there's a gap in talent, and that gap will be filled smoothly and quickly over time, and organically based on the opportunities that are out there. And I feel that there's been kind of like a little lynch of people who are blockchain-based NFTs, which are connecting with the metaverse discussions, which is fine and sensible, and I can understand it. I just don't think it's exclusive, and I just don't think it's 100% connected to some extent. In terms of 2022, there's been very healthy trends when it comes to marketing, with people discussing it. 2023, we'll see more activations in regards to it. And I do feel also that we're going to see some stronger experiences with some better hardware and hopefully gets cheap over time as well. I'm not hopeful about that. I know 2022's got very expensive for many different reasons, and I do hope that that's going to level out over time as well. That has been my very brief summary. You may find me at www.immersivewire.com, and where you find a weekly newsletter. I'm also very chatty on Twitter and LinkedIn, so feel free to connect me on both platforms, and I'm happy to have a little natter. That's been everything. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to see you all face to face one day. Take care.